So inspired by this being exploring monastic life and wanting to reflect a little bit on monastic life, and also inspired by Sister Christina's dissertation comparing our community to her community in the Dominican Sisters, I thought that I might compare our life here, or in particular, how I think of monastic life, to a group that at least some people might be more familiar with outside of the Abbey, and that's college Greek life, so sororities. Now, the caveat is, of course, that this is my experience from when I was in a sorority. I know that I'm not the only one in the room who was in Greek life in college. And of course, it can be specific to the college, specific to the specific group you're in, and even just the time. I know things have changed a lot since I was in college. And the other caveat is, of course, that Sravasti Abbey isn't only women, right? This is a mixed gender community. That's very important. So some of this is a little bit different then, but at least for the sake of comparison, we can think about sorority versus nuns community. So I thought I would go through 10 ways in which they are similar. So first, or number 10, I'll go backwards like David Letterman. Similar, sure. So number 10, how are they similar? Well, the members are identifiable, right? Sorority women wear their letters on trendy sweatshirts and often are traveling in a group, and they might be very exuberant and loud and having a very good time. And oh, that's a group of sorority women. At least that's how mine was. But for nuns, we wear robes, we shave our heads, and there's actually quite meaning in that, both in terms of what we're representing to others, representing our organization, hopefully positively, and for ourselves, letting go of some of our attachment to our appearance. And when we travel in public in groups, we're hopefully not being loud and obnoxious, but hopefully we are in fact showing a group of very peaceful people, that when we walk into a room, a restaurant, an airport, whatever it is, people are really taken by our composure, by our warmth, by our joy, by our friendliness. So very similar. Number 9, both traditions have rich histories established in a foreign time and place. So the earliest sororities were established 150 years ago, often by the women who were the first women attending their college after they were institutions for only men. So they were looking for support and ways to succeed academically. Now, of course, being a nun, this was something established 2,500 years ago, so a little bit older, in ancient India, by women who wanted to attain enlightenment and really transform their minds. So a little bit different. Yes, sorry. The members were women wanting to attain enlightenment, and it was established by the Buddha, yes. And that's really important, that the founders of the sororities were in fact just college women themselves, and they were the ones really setting down what this organization might look like, based on looking at maybe fraternities that existed at the time and saying, okay, let's do that. While for the nuns' order, it was some aspects of really looking at what was common for spiritual practitioners at the time, but at the same time, what's actually effective in transforming our minds. So number 8, related to this, is that both have many symbols and rituals. Now for the sororities, this was often invented by the founders, again, college women, who thought, hey, this can be our flower and it will have this symbolism. For our symbols and our rituals, these were, of course, set down in many cases by the Buddha himself, or established by realized masters who were really practicing the monastic tradition within their specific culture, within their specific time and place. And again, we have much symbolism in it, but again, not symbols just created by random monastics who happen to be here before us. Number 7, both joining a sorority or deciding to become a nun are very big commitments. So when you join a sorority, that really shapes your entire college experience. It gets better, Venerable, I promise. Again, I'm inspired by Sister Christina's dissertation, really looking at the similarities and differences.
Wait till you get to what they do on Friday and Saturday night.
Posada. And so, right, when you join a sorority, you're told this isn't just for 3 or 4 years, you're a member for life. And most of us don't pay our alumni dues even past that first year. But when you become a monastic, that really is for the rest of your life, a commitment that you're making. And not only that, and perhaps even if you're not a monastic, you make that aspiration in future lives to be a monastic as well. And hopefully that will actually be true for us. Number 6, another similarity is that there's a hierarchical leadership, both in sororities and in at least the communities that I've seen. Now, one important thing to note is that the leadership, say your chapter president, is typically just 2 or 3 years senior to the newest members in a sorority, right? She's maybe 21 or 22 and has done this for like 2 years. The good news is there's, at least in the sorority I know, there are also adults around. There's usually one adult, a house mom at some places, that isn't what we called her. There's maybe a grad student, so maybe 25, who lives there and helps guide them or solve problems that the 21-year-olds don't know how to solve. And then there's usually an alumni board that makes the big, important decisions. Here, on the other hand, at least in our nuns community, our leadership, our teachers, our harmonizers have decades of experience. And we're a fairly young community, so we also turn to elders in other communities who have even more experience being nuns, leading communities, and we have really that depth of leadership to look to. So we're not just voting on who do we think is going to be, the most fun president of the chapter. We're really following people who have wisdom, ethical conduct, and good qualities that we want to have ourselves. So the 5th similarity, counting down, number 5, is that both have rules. In the sorority, there's kind of a punitive enforcement of the rules. Like if you don't show up to things or you don't do the things you're supposed to do, you're not allowed to come to the big semi-formal at the end of the year. You're not allowed to come to our big fun events. Here at the monastery, I don't know if we have big fun events in quite the same way, but we process any issues that might arise through posada and confession. So number 4, similarity, there's in fact lots of rules, and many of them have been made in response to people making really poor decisions in the past. So within the sorority environment, your national organization has given you rules. Pan-Hellenic, the governing body of all sororities, have given you rules. Your college has given you rules. Your chapter gives you rules. And usually it's in terms of people have gotten hurt or broken the law or died. So don't do those things. And really, it's usually a big deal if you break them. Here, on the other hand, we have the Vinaya created by the Buddha, often in response to misbehaving monks and nuns, but that has really been interpreted, within the culture. We also have our community guidelines, but all of this is really to support us in our practice, in our spiritual pursuit, not just to cover our butts in cases of lawsuits. And the Buddha has even said that after his parinirvana, we can really treat the Vinaya, the pratimoksha, as the Buddha to guide us. So we can really see this as something that is not terrifying and problematic, but instead is beneficial. Number 3, and one of the things that's maybe most obvious, is that we live together in community. We have rotas, we have chores, but in a sorority, it's not really required. Not everyone lives together in the house. There's actually paid staff to do the cooking, maybe the cleaning and repairing some stuff, and the people who live there might really just see it as an alternative to a dorm or an apartment. On the other hand, for us, we live together, and this is part of our practice, really seeing ourselves and our afflictions as we bounce off one another in this rock tumbler. The way that we live our lives, we live in community, much of this was set up by the Buddha, again, to be part of our practice, not just an alternative to living in an apartment. And as everyone here knows, we don't have any paid staff. So, number 2, a big similarity is that both are related to identity. So for sororities, many of them are identity-based organizations. There was a Jewish sorority on campus. Some sororities might be based on music, or when you join, even if they don't have that specific of an identity, you're still looking to be with the people who are like you. In monasticism, we also think about identity. But in fact, we are looking at how clinging to identity, and in particular, how our grasping at an inherently existent self, leads to suffering. And therefore, this is something to be overcome, not supported and inculcated. And the number 1 way in which I think these 2 groups are quite similar, and the reason someone might choose to join a sorority and/or to become a nun, is that living this way is meant to bring happiness. And so in a sorority, the first thing that comes to mind is obviously the social life, the friends you make, there's the academic support, there's professional support, CV building, character building, and philanthropy a little bit. But for us as nuns, how does this bring happiness? We get to learn and practice the Dharma from the teachers that we live with. We get to develop our good qualities through doing that and the example and feedback we receive from others. We preserve the Dharma through embodying it and spreading it to others, teaching it. And ideally, all of this leads to attaining Buddhahood. So this is obviously a much more successful and long-lasting, true and genuine way to attain happiness for all.